And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Voice of Reason podcast. My name is Andy Van Beber. I am not the handsome face that you're used to seeing on your screen at this time, but we do what we can. Our buddy Sean is out in California. We talked to him Saturday. We'll talk more about that in a second, but joining me, as always, is Travis Kirkendall. And our special guest tonight, Martin Hanley. Gentlemen, how are we doing this evening?
You handled that introduction like a professional. I could not have done it any better. I
am no Sean.
I think we're doing just fine so far.
I'm no Sean Phillips, but let me tell you, it was. I tell you what, he is the glue that holds us together, Travis. I'm telling you.
He's got the comedy plugs.
He does have the comedy plugs.
I don't have that skill.
No, but I did talk. I talked to Sean on Saturday or Friday actually, as they were leaving Phoenix, and I had asked him how the truck was handling, and he said it's a gas guzzling machine, and he wasn't too pleased with he knew what was going to happen, but we talked about that, and he said that, I'll let you know when we get in. And then was it yesterday, Travis? We got the message on the group chat that he said that everything was good, and he was moved in, everything was, and
yeah, I believe it was yesterday.
And he was showing Murdog the sights and sounds of Los Angeles yesterday, and so hopefully everything went well. But our guest, Martin Hanley, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and all that other good stuff?
All right. So I am the director for Pike Lincoln Technical Center in Eolia, part of the Clopton School District. I've been there for about 9 years. Prior to that, I was at Lewis and Clark Career Center, and I taught computer information systems to juniors and seniors. That comes after 25-ish years in industry. So I've got that industry background and then the education background. And then on the side, in my spare time, I'm the pastor at Resurrection Church. We're a new church plant, just started about 3 years ago. Get to do some pretty cool things with kids. We're doing a children's camp coming up right before school starts. So I get to kick off my school year hanging out with 3rd through 6th graders and letting them run wild and teaching them about God and religion, and so it's just been a wild ride.
And so. I told him tonight my children will be amongst that group, and I apologized ahead of time that here's what it is. But Martin has been one of our faithful listeners, probably close from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And he commented last week and on our one of our posts and said, "Hey, you guys are doing a great job and all this stuff." But he said, "I'd like to hear some more from pro-life side." And I said, "Awesome!" And we have done this before when we talked about the transgender issue. We had Lauren Loggeman on one week, and then the following week we had oh my goodness. I'm terrible now. I can't think of his name right now. Oh my goodness! Wow, big time brain fart.
I can't think of his name either. I feel so bad, but that was probably one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, and that series that was one of our big ones, and so I thought it only fair to have Martin join us tonight. We are going to talk about some career education stuff. That's one of his I guess his pet things he likes to talk about. We actually did a show, season 1 on career education, if you remember that or not, Travis. And that was a lot of fun. So we're going to bring that up tonight. And as always, if you want to get on our chat lines, you can on any of the things that we follow on. We are streaming live tonight on. Let's see, we're on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube Live, and we have listeners on a little bit of each. So, and any time you want to interject, please feel free. But so, Martin, we were talking about, and as pastor of Resurrection Church, with the Roe v. Wade decision, as it came down, how did you view this as a pastor, as someone who, and and again, I'm going to preface this by saying I believe in all sanctity of all life, but yes, I did. We want to get from your perspective. How did you feel, or what's your feelings on this?
I'm going to be real honest. I was excited. I've been part of the pro-life movement for a while now. But I was excited, but I also wanted to approach this with a whole lot of love. And I think that's probably what's been missing in so many of these conversations is
Yes.
that love. I know that there's a whole lot of stuff out there that people are dealing with, and we just need to love them. And I knew that there was going to be some backlash. And so, as I thought about all of it, I thought, how can we as the church make sure that we're showing love? And we've got to be showing love, not just to those people that we hang out in church with, that look like me, that act like me, but also those people that are totally different. And I don't know that as a church we've been really good at showing love in the past. I think we're getting better. And so, it was just an interesting opportunity. I've been really careful to not post a whole lot on social media.
Right.
People who know me know I'm pro-life, but I've not posted a lot of "Yay, Roe got overturned," because while I am happy about it, I know there are others who are not, and I'd rather them have conversations with me than to think that I'm sitting there condemning them for being, pro-choice, for being different than me. And that's not it at all. So I just think we need to show more love, and we just need to work better at it. As a pastor, and do you believe, and I mean, I took part in the Students for Life March in Washington, D.C. It's been 30 years ago. But there are, within the pro-life movement, do you see different groups, per se, subgroups that say, okay, we believe banning abortion wholesale, or if there's rape or incest or health of the mother, what are your feelings on that? So most of the stuff that I'm seeing, I'm really seeing a couple of different categories. In general, if the health of the mother is at stake, I don't know of anybody that would have an issue. And I know that, I think last week, I don't remember if it was Travis or Sean brought up somebody that had cancer and was going to a clinic and had people just attacking her. And that's, I'm going to say, as a pro-life guy, as a pastor, as somebody that's, pretty passionate about this, that's absolutely terrible. Mm-hmm. Those people should never have attacked her. I totally disagree with that on so many different levels. From the standpoint of if the mother's life is at risk, that's a totally different conversation, and that's a conversation where we've got to come alongside of those people and love them and grieve with them. And that's a situation that, man, I hope I'm never in, but man, we need to show love. Then you see the other sides are no other abortions, period. And then there's that group that are going to be okay with rape and incest abortions because of that. I struggle, I'll be honest, I struggle with that because I believe that Scripture's true. And I know of multiple occasions in Scripture where some amazing things have happened from whether it's incest or rape. And so that's where I'm on that struggle side. But what's interesting, guys, is that I did some digging, and when you look at rape and incest, that's less than 3% of all abortions across the nation. So we're not talking the majority of them there. And I feel like, and this is just me, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like since the leak, the most of what I've been hearing is, we got to worry about these things, and that's less than 3% of them. Let's have a conversation about those. So honestly, those are the smallest amount of things that we're worrying about.
And that's the thing that concerns me, though. When I read an article that was sent to me by a friend today that was talking about someone who was going through I can't think of where it was at now, but it was
Was that the article you shared with me?
Yes,
earlier?
it was. I can't remember
I'm
where
trying to remember where that was.
I think it was Ohio, but it was because of cancer, and she had to go. It was in Ohio. Yeah, it was Ohio because she had to go to Indiana.
Yes, Ohio. Yep.
She was in Ohio, and she could not get. If the hospital refused to do any more chemotherapy on her because of the fact that it would end up her losing the child. I mean, they say, hey, you're going to get this chemotherapy. It's going to kill this child. We can't do that. And so that's where that's the area I struggle with too. One of our viewers said, God never intended children and women to suffer trauma from incest and rape. So that's a very interesting point too. What would you say to that one, Martin?
God doesn't want any of us to suffer for anything, and you're absolutely right. He does not want that. But we see through over and over in Scripture that God does use the horrible things in our lives for good in so many different cases. And just in general in my life, I've seen terrible things happen to me, and they've been used for good. And again, I want to make sure that everybody understands. I don't want to be callous about this.
No.
We got to love those individuals. My background in ministry has been youth and children's ministry primarily. That's what I started out as, and and then being in education, I care about kids.
Yeah,
and I don't want to see anyone suffer. And so we need to approach it with love. And I know I keep saying that, but that's how we got to do this.
And I want to go after that because, and this was the conversation that we had with our guest last week, that the church universal has, I think, struggled with that, and I am so glad to hear you say that because the people, of the strict conservative, right? We're those, I can speak to that because I came from that line of very conservative Baptist that says, well, instead of this, and I think this is where the church has failed because, it's refreshing to hear another person say this. The guys hear me say this stuff all the time, but it's refreshing to hear another Christian say that, instead of responding with condemnation, and we have to respond in love to people because there are ministry needs that we're not meeting, and this is where we're failing. And it's refreshing to hear that. Travis, did you find your stats that you were looking for? Did you?
Yeah, no, I found two articles. I think they're the same, but they're kind of similar to what Martin was saying as far as like the hard cases and stuff. So this is one from humanlifeinternational.org. And this was from, I believe, May of 2021. Yes. And the article is Why Women Abort. And there was a study done. Where did they share it? I forget who actually did the study, but it's got sites and all that stuff. And I can share links to this for our listeners if they want to look into it afterwards. But on this particular study, so 3.5% of 100 was hard cases. These hard cases include 1.14% are done to save a life of physical health of the mother, 1.28% to preserve the mental health of the mother, 0.39% in cases of rape and incest.
There you go.
0.69% for fetal birth defects and eugenics. I'm not a scientist, so forgive me.
For you.
And then 96.5% of all abortions are therefore performed for social and economic reasons.
Mm-hmm.
To go off of this was a study, IllinoisRightToLife.org. I pulled this from. These percentages are kind of all over the place, but I think they kind of paint the picture for reasons outside of the hard cases. So 90% of women give multiple reasons for why they are seeking abortion. 74% of women say child would dramatically change their life in the ways of interfere with their education, interfere with their job, say they have other dependents. 73% of women say they can't afford a baby right now because they're unmarried, because they have student or they are a student or planning to study. They can't afford the baby and childcare, can't afford the basic needs of life. They're unemployed. 48% said they didn't want to be a single mother, or that they were having relationship problems, unsure of the relationship, might break up soon, that kind of fear. A lot of social and economic issues of these studies I found were like the majority reason as to why a woman would choose to abort. I've heard the argument, and this is not my own opinion, but I think it's worth discussing. The opinion that of personal responsibility for actions. And I believe it does go both ways for the male and female. And I've heard a lot of people who are pro-life saying that, the couple should take responsibility for their actions. And instead of choosing an abortion, no matter what their economic or social status or situation is, they should take the responsibility of raising that child, given the circumstances. I'm curious what your all's thoughts are on that. And our listeners, if they want to comment.
Well, I was going to say, we've got about 3 comments backed up on the chat lines. I knew it was going to be full tonight. Martin, go ahead.
I'm going to say, I'm not saying that the couple needs to step up and take responsibility. There's people out there, and I know that there's some challenges with this, but there's people out there that desperately want to adopt. And as Andy mentioned your last podcast, it was like $80,000 and 5 weeks or 5 years to get on the 5-year waiting list, and that's insane as far as
and that's not. I mean, I looked back at some of that after I'd made those, and I was actually a little bit underestimated on that. Because again, the court system is such a mess. Mm-hmm. The adoption process in domestic adoption, it is so weird. Well, it's not weird, but it's the foreign countries have the process down better than we do. But at the same time, our judicial system believes in the wholeness of an American family and trying to keep it together at whatever cost. So let me address some of these comments. We got 3 comments here I really want to bring up. First, Colby Coleman, another one of our longtime listeners. He stated that, with abortion, we have to speak the truth as Christians. What are your thoughts on that, Martin?
In love, truth in love. And I mean, you guys addressed that before. Yeah, we need to speak truth, but we can't just smack them upside the head with the Jesus baseball bat. That does not work. Yeah. We gotta, come alongside of them. And every single reason that Travis mentioned, man, that's a spot for Christians to step up and help.
Yeah.
If there's financial issues, I truly believe that if the church had been doing what we have been called to do for years,
yes,
that we would not have social programs at the government level, because the church would be doing what we're supposed to be doing. Now, I don't want to cast shade on any of my fellow pastors, because it happens all over the place. And thankfully, I'm seeing more and more churches step up to do things to help out those ladies. There's an organization in Bowling Green called Anne's Anchor, and the whole point of that, it's a Christian-based organization. I think it's Christian-based, but they're coming alongside these single ladies who have children or who are pregnant that don't think they can have a child and raise it well because they don't know what they're doing. And they help them learn some life skills that they may not have ever learned, help them get a job, help them get education, help them just work through this process. And that's what we need to be doing for every single one of those issues. Travis, that you mentioned, whether it's relationships, whether it's finance, whether it's getting somebody through school. And if they can't get through it, that's where we need to be fixing the adoption issue.
Yeah.
Because that's got to be fixed
And
in our nation.
and I truly believe and I've said that too. I've said that many times that is where the church has dropped the ball. The church universal has dropped the ball because we just, we can't, and but Stephanie Ward, our guest last week, just chimed in and she said eugenics, Travis, the word you used earlier, eugenics is the termination of genetic defective child, is what eugenics mean. So
thank you.
And then our buddy Matthew Edelman chimes in. Hello, Matthew Edelman.
All right, Matt.
He says, to say God brings good out of bad situations misses the real pain and hurt experienced by those facing abortion. What good? When social programs are so often cut, healthcare and daycare costs are skyrocketing, and the church has stigmatized those making the decision. And again, we just kind of addressed that. But yeah, I mean, this is one of those great dividing issues. When you look at the issue of abortion, and by the way, that was our survey question this week was, I always forget, this is the thing I always forget to do every week is bring up this survey question, have it ready on my phone. But our survey,
what was the survey question?
that's what I'm going to. And my internet's, there we go. So the survey,
I don't see this anymore.
The survey question, by the way, if you ever want to know how to get to our survey question, you go to Voice of Reason on Facebook, you click on the group tab and you join the group. So you don't have to, but this way it says, what do you feel is the greatest source of division in our country? And I gave a bunch of choices: race, religion, gun issues, socioeconomic issues, abortion rights issues, political parties in general. And then our good friend Susan Loggeman so aptly added the media. And I thought, well, I should.
Man, I wish that one would have been on before I voted.
I should. Yeah, but race came in at 7%. Socioeconomic came in at 13%. Political parties in general, 80%. And again, another large turnout on our vote this week. Thank you for those who voted. And I almost forgot to post it today. And that was a lot of votes for just having it on this afternoon. But yeah, so I mean, I was looking. So I was watching. I was watching ABC News. I'm trying to spice up the variety of what I watch. ABC News did on whatever their Sunday program is. It's not It's CBS's Face the Nation. But ABC did their thing, and they were talking to these political analysts about what this issue then will do for the parties coming up in the upcoming election. Right. And their basic response is it's either going to be this is the first time I've seen a lot of political analysts kind of scratching their head, because they're like, okay, you have President Biden, who is at a U.S. historical lowest approval rating of any president in the history of the United States ever, at 37%. I've never, that number blows my mind, but but he's at a 37%, and you've got Democrats who are, again, kind of making a late bid at this January 6th thing. And then you've got the Roe v. Wade thing. And they said, this is one of those times where we could see a total landslide for Republicans, or the Democrats come out in force and they show their disdain, and so it's really going to be a toss up to say, okay, this is, because you can't, I don't think you can accurately say who's going to walk away with all the marbles. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a straight split like we've been seeing, the 50-50 in the Senate. And I definitely don't think we're going to see, I think the Democrats, I honestly believe the Democrats are going to hold the majority in the House, but that majority is going to shrink a lot. But what's your thoughts on that, Travis?
Yeah, we kind of touched on it last week, and there was a lot of talks before this whole court case decision of like, oh, the red wave's coming, the red wave. And I think this was a huge shift in the next election. It's going to be, Personally, I think this was such a big decision. I think Democrats might actually pull off the majority, like you said. I would not surprise me one bit. I do agree, though. I think that their majority shrinks 100%. But man, it's so many Republicans have taken such a hard stance on the abortion issue, and man, I kind of agree with you. Yeah, I think Democrats might actually pull it off, even though Biden's ratings are absolutely god awful.
Right.
Martin, what do you think about it?
I've been watching it, and I saw an article today where exactly what you're talking about, the how this like never happened. That they're just confused. But I would agree. I think that we'll see a smaller majority for them in the House. I'm really interested to see is though in the Senate. It's going to be that'll be an interesting race because I had to do a early absentee ballot, which I've never done before. It was kind of cool, and there were 20 different people running for Missouri U.S. Senate just in the Republican Party.
Oh, for the primary.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many are on the how many? So 20 that you said 20 Republicans or Democrats?
20 Republicans.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many were on the Democrat?
I'd like to. Martin and I had this conversation 2 weeks ago when we met in the hallway about when we talked about the Navy SEAL.
Greitens.
Yeah, Eric.
Greitens?
Yeah, we had this conversation.
Navy SEAL?
Yeah, I was like,
Navy SEAL.
Yeah, Navy SEAL Eric Greitens. There we go. I was just like, and to say that he's the front runner out of the mix of mutts that are out there Oh, here we go. Two more comments here. Matt Edelman came back in. And he said it's great that there are church organizations wanting to help, but when raising a child that costs $100,000 to $200,000 over a lifetime, how many of these organizations can financially afford to sustain the effort? That is the challenge, man. I tell you what. I'm trying to think of the organization there is up at Hannibal. I used to be involved with. I actually did some volunteer work with them, but that indeed is the challenge of these organizations to get people. And Martin, when you say that's the rub right there, is because getting people to say, okay, we believe, and Stephanie brought this up last week. This is where you have to get people to be able to step up to the plate and say, okay, you're pro-life. Okay. Now, what are you, to quote one of my favorite movies, The Untouchables, what are you prepared to do? Okay. What are you prepared to do? Because with me, and I said this from my outset from last week, because my worldview has changed a lot in the last 11 years. When Janine had her ectopic pregnancy, she was going to die. She had to take the chemical, whatever it was, and it was the hardest thing that we had ever done. And when I look at people who say, okay, there are those of us, like you said, Martin, you are absolutely correct. When we say I personally know, I can honestly say I know of hundreds of people who want to domestic adopt. Mm-hmm. And they're afraid of the whole foreign adoption scene. They don't want to go through the foreign adoption scene. But the domestic, if we're going to say, and I don't know how to approach this is one of those things that I don't have the answer to. I don't know where the solution is at. But if the government wants to make this decision to say, okay, we're allowing the states to say whether or not you want to have abortions, mm-hmm. I think there needs to be a caveat in there that says, okay, you can do, okay, but not to play on words, but what's your plan B? What's your plan B? What are you going to do then? Are you going to say, you need to have you need to provide help for these people then? If you're going to ban abortion, then you need to provide, like you said, Martin, if the church hadn't dropped the ball whenever we dropped the ball,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't be in this issue. But what are you the government prepared to do? So I don't know how else to address that.
I think there's got to be a couple of things there. Not only does it the government, but those of us who are in pro-life need to step up.
Mm-hmm.
We just do. Churches need to step up and come alongside those people, because I get it. I've had 3 kids, and at $100,000, that's a pretty accurate number. And so we need to step up and help. But I also think that the government needs to figure out a better way for some of these people who we've convinced them, we've shown them that we don't want to end a human life. Now let's provide, they know they can't handle, for any of those wide variety of reasons. Let's provide a path for them to allow someone to adopt that in less than 20 years at $200,000 or whatever the cost is to adopt a child. So I think that's the government's got two focuses: not only where they're going to step up to help support these families, but two, how are we going to make this easier for people to adopt?
Mm-hmm. And Stephanie actually she chimed in a little bit more when she said that it was 100 to 200K for a typical child. Now she actually has a child that has special needs, and she says, "What is the reality of organizations helping with children like my daughter who has special needs and already racked up millions in health care by year 15?" She's 15 years old. My little friend, her name is Annie, and I got to spend the afternoon with her yesterday, which was awesome, by the way. I forgot to mention that. But can the church globally and locally help? And again, what we just said, we've got to, if we're, and I think this is the problem with, you look at any social cause, whether it's, Black Lives Matter, whether it's transgender, whether it's right to life, whatever it is, okay, if you're going to push for your cause, you need to have, and I'm pointing my own fingers at myself too, you have to have a plan of action, okay? Because Roe v. Wade has been a thing that has been a thorn in pro-life side for almost 50 years now. 1974, 73?
04.
Yeah, 73, 74. Okay. Now you've had this time. Okay. You can't just stop and say, "Oh, okay, mission accomplished." Like we've been saying, we're repeating it's kind of, but again, when you have these social justice movements, okay, what are we going to do? I was watching, by the way, I want to recommend a show. If you have Apple Plus TV, you need to check out The Problem with Jon Stewart. I don't know if you've ever heard of if you guys have heard of the comedian Jon Stewart or not. He got the Mark Twain Humor Award this year. I kind of keep my finger on I like the Mark Twain Humor Award. It's went to Dave Chappelle. It's went to Dave Letterman. It's went to Johnny Carson. It's went to Don Rickles. It's went to a bunch of my comedic giants. And so I kind of started. I'm not an avid follower of Jon Stewart, but when they said they started talking about him. So I went and watched his first I watched one of his episodes. He was talking. So this thing is on racism this week. He's like, okay, he said, this is, if we as white people say we're not racist, okay, this has been, and he played clips all the way back to the 30s of different African Americans who said, here's the race problem, here's the race problem, here's the race problem. And then he played all these sound bites of all these white folks who are saying, okay, now we get to sit and now we're listening. Okay, but what are you prepared to do? What are you prepared to do? And we had Sean Yates on here last year. I'd love to have him on again too. But we had Sean Yates on, and we discussed race and that issue with race and how do we deal with that? And it has to be more than just active conversations. It has to be a way of mind. It has to be supportive. And it's the same thing with this movement. If we're going to say, all right, now we've made the step. Okay, hours after, minutes at, I don't know if it's minutes or after or hours after, but our Missouri Attorney General, he may issue the statement. Here's how it's going to be. Boom, boom, boom. We're going to prosecute.
It was pretty quick.
Yeah, it was real quick. And I read it last week. We're going to prosecute anybody any doctors who do A, B, C, or D. Okay. Now, unlike other states where there's, it could be, I think Ohio and Ohio and Pennsylvania there could be actions taken against the parents themselves, which I think is a bit much. Well, I know I'm not going to say it is a bit much. It is much, but it's, okay. So then what are you going to do? I don't know what else to say about that, but
I agree. And, based on the poll and something that you and I talked about, that whole unity thing, we've not been able to come together as two separate groups to talk about how do we fix this. It's just been, nope, we're going to, there's been no conversation. And and I don't want us to spend, the rest of our lives talking about how are we going to do this, but we need to have some real conversations between both groups to say, all right, how do we fix this? And we should have been having that, for the last 50 years.
Well, and that's where, and this is, again, we talked about this, Travis and Sean and I talked about this from episode 1. Episode 1, we have always been about having the conversation. And one of the biggest issues that people, and I've said this, I bet you I've said this 100 times on this podcast, we have lost the art of compromise in this country. Mm-hmm. We have lost the art of, I always mention a quote from Barack Obama's book. I've never read the whole thing, but there's this quote in there. It was his book, Dreams of My Father, and which he talked about, back when, Martin and I were younger fellows back in the 80s, when guys like Tip O'Neill, and you talk about, he was the Speaker of the House and he was hardcore Republican. You had the Joe Biden. I mean, those guys would, they'd argue it out and slug it out on the Senate floor or on the House floor, and then they'd go out to the bar and have a beer together. They go to each other's kids' weddings, bar mitzvahs, whatever. And they were friends because they established relationships. They worked together. They weren't these two separate cores. They had a common goal, which was advancement of the United States. And to me, as a historian, I look at where we have come, and we don't look at the advancement. We're looking at the advancement of our particular movement, our particular party, our particular issue, instead of saying we as Americans need to learn how to solve this problem, or how to at least address this problem. So there's my daily soapbox. There it was. I'm sorry, just came up on it.
No, you're fine. I agree with you 100%. There needs to be solutions.
So one other issue that we would do, and again, thank you guys for the comments on we had so far, but one of the other issues that we wanted to talk about, not really an issue, but Martin's other hat that he wears, which is the director of the Pike Lincoln Technical Center. Martin, tell us a little bit about what you offer out there at the Pike Lincoln Technical Center. What kind of programs you guys offer, and what kind of training you guys do out there?
Awesome. Love to do that. So we serve every single school district in both Pike and Lincoln counties. And I want everybody to know that every single school district is served by Pike and Lincoln, or by Pike Lincoln Technical Center. We have auto service, we have auto collision, we have diesel, we have a law enforcement program, we have a health sciences program where students can get pharmacy tech, vet tech, and CNA. We have a computer networking program, we have a 3D modeling program, we have a building trades program where they build a house every year, or almost every year. And then we have a welding program. And I just got to brag on my welding program.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
These guys, last year alone, they competed in a bunch of different contests. They brought in over $150,000 worth of prizes and scholarship money. These guys have, when they complete our program, they're leaving with AWS certification. They're going out working, and they're making more than I am, and I've
Yeah.
got 3 degrees.
Yeah.
So it's just awesome what these guys get to do. We bring through all the sophomores in the 2 counties, other than those that go to Troy. That's a little bit too many
Yeah.
sophomores to bring into my building, but we bring every sophomore and all of the 8th graders. And the one thing that every single one of those notice is everything's hands-on. We don't just talk about changing the brakes. We change the brakes. We don't just talk about building a house. We build a house. So it's all hands-on, taught by experts in the industry.
You have, and I want to give a shout out to some of your guys out there who I know do a knockdown job. Aaron Irvin, who is your one of your welding, and I've met your instructor. I think he's from Poland, correct? Is that where he's from?
He was former. He left us a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay. Well, I had met him, and Aaron and I've known a number of Clopton students who have went out to do just fantastic work. And continue to do. They've done a lot. One of them, your graduates this year, Will Clark, has done a number of little projects for me, and he does fantastic work. You have Shane Martin, who does building trades out there. Shane Martin, who he remodeled my kitchen. I was like, I'm just like, and I know those guys have a passion. Mr. Elliott, I can't think of his first name right now. Shane Elliott. Yeah. You have guys who, like you said, industry experts. What are you seeing? I mean, is this it's not necessarily a new trend, would you say? I mean, as far as we're seeing more people go toward, I almost want to say avoiding college and going the technical route. What are your thoughts on that?
We are seeing a greater increase in that. Gone are the days that career tech ed, or as it was called back then, VOTech, was for the dumb kids who weren't going to succeed. And I hate to say that, but that's the attitude. It's not anymore. These guys are leaving with great training. Whatever your feelings were about the global pandemic and all of the shutdowns, when we were shut down, every single Pike Lincoln program, every single one of them, and not just Pike Lincoln, but all of my counterparts across the state, those were all considered essential skills. Mm-hmm. They were all kids who were working.
They were working, yeah,
keeping us all protected in whatever. So it's becoming. Gone are the days where everybody has to go to college to make something of themselves. And don't get me wrong, college is for some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
I have 3 degrees,
Right.
But it's not for everybody. I've got students who are out just knocking it out of the park. I want to brag on one of them, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Former Clopton student, Megan Parrish. She's now married.
Yep.
She was in our program.
I actually saw her yesterday.
Yeah, So I took my dog to obedience training tonight, and she was leading the obedience training for the dog and just knocking it out of the park. Incredible job. And she's happy doing what she loves to do. And I think that's the big thing that we do, is we help people figure out their passion. If you like to work on cars, man, let's help you work on cars so that you can then go make a living working on cars or building houses or whatever it might be.
And do you think that this is with the way, and I'm going to point this out too. You mentioned making more than you and I, and these guys who are in career who are going into these fields. We have guys who work for is it called Black Horse or whatever it is? And they, because it's the Dugan boys work for them, and I know some of those guys did. It's not called computer aided drafting anymore. It's called something else. I don't know, whatever it is, but they did that out there with you guys and the welders. And I mean, I think this is going to be more of a trend, because if you want to stay ahead of this inflationary curve that we're seeing, this is where it's at. You know, I always, yeah, Stephanie says, thank you for saying college isn't for everyone. So many kids need to hear this. Yes, indeed. We,
Amen.
because I tell you what, of course, I went in, I went into teaching because I have a desire to work with teenagers and I work with, Travis is a perfect example of a lifelong friend now that I've developed out of, who was one of my students way back when, and now is one of my good friends, and, but, if you're saying, okay, I want to know what can I go into, it pleases my heart to see that my son loves coding. He loves computer coding. And I know there's a place for him out there at Pike Lane. And I'm when he gets into high school, I'm going to say, hey, I know their IT, and your IT, you guys got a great IT program out there too. And you've got I know a lot of those kids are going from IT and they're going straight out into the field. I think of one in particular, Alex Carnahan, who works over at, he graduated before you came there, Martin, but I saw him this year at graduation, and I was like, "How's it going, man?" Oh, he said, "Just enjoying the six-figure life." And I was like, "Just shut up, come on. I don't need to hear that, But he's he graduated, geez, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, and he started out, ground level, and he's worked his way up. And one of my friends who used to be my partner in the DJ business, who frames houses for a living, he's union carpenter down in Winsville. He's like, dude, and I don't know if he came out there. I've sent him your number a number of times, but I was like, go out there and talk to the tech kids. And he said, we cannot get enough framers. He said, and we're starting these guys out. He said, we'll pay for their union training. We'll pay for all this stuff. And he said, they're starting them out at 22. And I said, so what's prevailing right now? And I think he said it's like 35, 40, somewhere in that, just an hour. And the demand is there. It's just, if you want to take it, it's just, Travis, you and I have had this discussion before. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, Martin made a good point, and this is something I experienced. I think I was on the backside of this trend where people that went to tech school were considered the dumb kids or the kids that were going to fail. And that it wasn't something that was said, but it was definitely something that was felt. And that's, for me, in my experience with it, that's how I felt. I did tech school for, it was weird. I had a technical high school diploma, but I did tech school for like a week. And then I went back to normal because there was that sentiment to it. And I ended up going to college for open options. I had no idea what I was doing. I put myself into debt going to school, not happy whatsoever, and ended up joining the military, which I would argue the military was kind of viewed as the same way. It didn't have to be said, but that's how it felt. And it's awesome to see that trend is finally changing, because from what I'm seeing in my trade, yeah, there is a shortage. We cannot find more climbers. It's few and far between. And if you can get in with the right company, man, you can make a killing. Especially you get into the union, day and night difference, let me tell you. And I've plugged this, now that I have the opportunity to talk to you, I've plugged this book before. And if you can do it, if you can buy this book for some of your students, it's called Blue Collar Cash by Ken Rusk. It is a book I read last year, and I wish I had this when I was in high school. I think it would help some of your students a lot. And I wanted to ask you as well, do you guys do like presentations at like Clopton and other schools as well, saying like, hey, this is what we offer.
Yep.
This is like career tracks, and this is the potential money you can make. Cause like when I went to Clopton, that wasn't ever, I don't remember ever having a tech representative coming out saying, hey, this is the potential earnings you can make in these fields. This is the careers. We have connections with these companies or this union or whatever. That was never preached. And God, if I would have known about just union trades and the benefits and how to get in and like start, I would be so far ahead of the curve right now at my age. And I think it's really neat that, like you said, that trend's starting to change. Sorry, I know that was a lot, but
No.
Are you guys offering anything like that like right now? Is that something you've been pushing?
So we've steered away from the dollar figures, because what I don't want is somebody coming up to us and saying, "You told me I was going to make $70,000 a year, and I'm only making
And,
60." Well, you still
and I
make
get
more
that.
money than my teachers, so
What
quit
they don't
complaining.
realize is you got to put in about 4 or 5 years, and then you start
Right.
seeing that money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I'm all for adding that. You know, we have all of the sophomores come in, and something we started last year is we're not only are the sophomores coming in, but we're also sending people out to the schools. But great idea to just start actually really plugging what can they do leaving Pike Lincoln. We've tried to sell them on the, hey, look what you get to do at Pike Lincoln, but a good idea to add what can you do beyond Pike Lincoln, because that's huge.
One of our
No, I think that would really, really help. Just from my experience, outside of high school, I really had no direction. Like I
Right.
didn't know what tech could lead to or what a trade could lead to because it wasn't educated. So if you're able to, I think that would really, really help a lot of students.
Perfect.
and one of my favorite, and teachers don't say this often, but one of my favorite professional development days, whenever we hear, oh, professional development, we're like, oh, but one of my favorite ones was, my administrator, Larry Loggeman, said, hey, we're going to go out, we're going to do, and we have Mondays off, and we would come in on certain Mondays, and Larry said, hey, just for you guys, Larry said in our staff meeting, he said, you guys need to be the biggest commercial for Pike Lincoln. And he said, I think it would be awesome if you guys would go out and sit in some classes out at Pike Lincoln. And so I chose, because two things that I love to want to know more about is welding. I've never learned how to weld before, and I went out there and I watched. Of course, Aaron Irvin was a student of mine way back when, and I just watched how. I mean, he's got his different level of students, and and they all got them, I guess, divided up and everything. But I just watching these guys just come in, and I mean, it's just like clockwork watching them come in. And he is constantly just rotating around, sticking his head in, looking, hey, okay, well, what about this? And you get this, and here, make this angle, and I mean, and this was a guy, how long was he in the welding industry, Martin, before he even came? Because he was like one of my first graduates from Clopton.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he's been out for at least almost 20 years, I would say.
Yeah, he's been with us, oh gosh, at least 10 years.
Yeah, and
maybe
he's
11.
And he did quite a bit of traveling too on the road and welding, and he does a ton, he does a ton of welding in the summertime. And then I went over, like I said, with Shane. Shane has so many. I mean, I've seen a lot of the projects. I mean, I've been to the houses that Shane has remodeled, and Shane's kind of a house flipper, and just seen his work, and I've talked to Shane Elliott before, and just kind of, because I've had both of his kids in school, and in technical education, I'm with you on this, Travis, because out of all my brothers, my wife hates it when I do this, but out of all my brothers, I was the least like this. You probably should have had any business going to college, but I did anyway. But again, back when I was in high school, we had, the Capital Area Vocational Center, which was in Springfield, Illinois, and we have a big complex out at Eolia, but this was a massive complex, and they had everything from radio and television production to, everything out there, every kind of mechanics you can think of. And we toured it I remember touring that as a sophomore. And, it just, even back then, because I think probably when I was in high school was probably the beginning of that revival of technical education and trying to get people to say, here it is, here you go. But yes, definitely, definitely thank you for having that service available and educating kids towards that. Before we sign off tonight, I do, again, want to thank Martin for being with us tonight. We got to do the plug though, Travis. We got to do the plug. I'm kind of disappointed. The merch channel, we only had one sale this week, and I'm kind of bummed. We only sold we sold the T-shirt, and we have some outstanding merchandise. And again, I do want to emphasize this. We're not sending this off to Vietnam to be made. This is being made right in Eolia, Missouri. I don't know what the name of Angie Clark's business is, but I approached her because I wanted to keep it local. I wanted to keep the money in our community, in our area. She does fantastic work. She's done work for Clopton. She's done T-shirts for us before. She's done T-shirts and she's done jerseys. And you're not going to find a jersey at these prices, and with your name and your number and everything on the back, totally customizable. And we do have until July 31st when we place this order. And there are a variety of ways to pay. PayPal and Stripe and all that other good stuff is on there. Tell us what's going on in American Traditional, Travis.
Well, we have some new samples out. I think I preached that last week. I still have yet to get the actual just sample bags listed on the website, separate from like the sample kit that I put together. Again, though, if you're just interested in just the sample packs I got, just send us a message on American Traditional and I'll get you hooked up. Yep. Voice of Reason code, all lowercase, will save you 10% on all your orders. Shipping is free on everything, minus the hoping to have some more samples out next week if I have time to make them. The samples, the whole idea behind it is we're just trying to make new stuff, kind of see what people want, and then make a new product out of it.
And I was bummed.
So that's really.
I was bummed. I was bummed today. I had somebody who was going to take advantage of the 20% off Van Beber and Sons DJ, and when we went to the booking process, and I looked at my calendar, I was going to be double booked, and she was like, because that was going to save her a little bit of cash. So I'm sorry, but these things happen. And yes, if you contact Van Beber and Son DJ Services and say, hey, I heard it on Van Beber and Son, or I heard it on Voice of Reason podcast, 20% off for the month of July to help celebrate our launch of our merch site. So all of that good stuff. Anything else we need to address tonight? Martin, we are so glad. Anything else that you would like to say before we sign off tonight?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Thanks for being willing to always have multiple viewpoints. I got to tell you, I really appreciate that. I don't want to live in an echo chamber. And I'm going to do my own plug for American Traditional because I don't need a DJ, but man, that coffee was good when I ordered it. So I'm going to have to get some more.
There you go. There it is. Testimonial number one.
Thank you.
Travis is repping his merch there, and if they would just put out a 3X shirt for the big guys, I would order one. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I am a T-shirt connoisseur. But
that's something I'm trying to get worked out too, is some more shirts. Yeah, we need some different shirts.
But anyway, thank you so much, man alive. I'm pretty sure that we got to all the comments tonight. I knew we were going to be full. I love when I say last week it was crickets on the page. I'll say this right now. We had no, I said it to Travis after the show, the chat bar was empty last week. It was total. I was like, but we had like 10, most of our stuff comes later on in the week when we get most of our downloads during the week. But tonight we just have a full board, and it actually scrolled down. So I know we missed a couple, but thank you guys all for who tuned in tonight. Anyway, hopefully we'll see. We're going to see if hopefully Sean will be back with us next week. But we want to thank Martin Hanley for joining us, for Travis and Martin and our beloved leader, Sean Phillips. We want to thank you for listening to Voice of Reason. You can catch us on on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to it. We're we're all over the place. So anyway, thank you so much, and we will see you all again next week.
a good one.